Welcome to Saturday Morning Success, the show that shares with you the secrets of success in life, relationships, and in business.
It must be Saturday morning. That's why you guys are all here. We're so glad to have you here every Saturday morning for the Saturday Morning Success television talk show. And Jennifer, how are you doing?
What did you just call me?
I know. I saw her picture come up on the beginning.
I know. I was confused. I was like, wait a minute.
She took vacation, and I don't know that she's coming back. We're going to have to put your picture up there.
You better be nice, or I'm going to go on vacation with her.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, okay. I will be nice then.
That's good.
Hey, are you happy about today?
I'm more than happy. I'm excited.
Good.
Super excited.
We have a great guest today, Miss Mary Cimiluca. How are you doing
Hi,
today, Mary?
how are you guys?
We're good.
Good.
I'm so glad to be out here with you.
Oh, man, let me tell you a little bit about Mary. Mary is incredible. Mary has been a doctor and a nurse and MBA and is a director of films and all this incredible stuff. Producer. Oh, I said director. Yeah, sorry. I know that you want to be the director, though, right? Right? No. Okay. So, producer of films and incredible amounts of success in your life, and you've also been over some challenges. Is that right?
Absolutely.
So, we're going to talk about those things, and what we want to do is find out. We want to start out with a little bit about what you're doing now with some films, but then let's go right into what the challenges are that you've been through in your life.
Okay.
And then we'll move forward with that, how you got over those things.
Okay. I came out to California in 2010 expecting to do nothing. I came out from one of the challenges, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But I ran into by accident at one of my conferences, I ran into a young director from Austria.
With
Vienna.
your car?
No.
Oh, okay.
We met accidentally, I should say.
That's good.
A young director from Austria, Vienna, Austria, named
Wow.
Alexander Vesely, and he was doing interviews at the conference that I was attending, and I thought he was some ordinary kid with a camera running around, but we just buddied up and became friends the whole week during the conference. And at the end of the conference, I went to the hotel coffee shop to have dinner that night after all the staff had gone home. It's a very busy week, so I just wanted to chill out, stay over one night, extra night.
Yeah, avoid the traffic.
Go to the spa the next day, do all that stuff. And he came in and sat down and said, "Can I have dinner with you?" I said, "Sure." So we're sitting there, and suddenly all these world-famous psychiatrists started coming over to the table. "Oh, Alex, I'm so honored to meet you. Oh, Alex, when you get back to Austria, please give your grandmother my best."
You're like, who is this guy?
I'm like,
Candid camera or something?
wait a minute, I'm missing something.
You thought he just wanted a date, right?
No, unfortunately, he's 25 years younger than me. So. But the girls were after him. Believe me, he's a chick magnet. So it was really the strangest thing. It was almost like being in the Twilight Zone. So after the last one left, I said, "Okay, I may be stupid, but I'm not that stupid. Who are you really?" And he laughed. He said, "I'm nobody." He said, "They just want information about my grandfather." I said, "Okay, I'll bite. Who's your grandfather?" And he said, "Viktor Frankl." I said, "Oh, shut up. I was married to Elvis."
Right?
Well, for those of you who may not be aware, Dr. Viktor Frankl is probably one of the best-known figures in the world. His long-selling bestseller, Man's Search for Meaning, has sold over 16 million copies worldwide. And
wow.
He's probably best known for that book, although he created 33 other books in his lifetime, and for being a very famous, outspoken Holocaust survivor.
I'm reading the book right now.
Yeah, it's terrific.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's. I read the book the first time in '67 or '66, somewhere in that neighborhood. My first psychology course. It was required reading when I was in college, and then fast forward to working in one of my other careers, which is a media company that I own. The American Psychiatric Association is one of my clients. And so I was attending their conference, and he was a keynote speaker there and speaking in front of 10,000 people. And he got the Oscar Pfister Award from that group for the greatest thinker of the 20th century.
Nice.
So fast forward to 2008, and I just happened to move 3,000 miles away from anything I knew, run into his grandson at a coffee shop in San Diego. It's pretty Twilight Zone. Yeah, so we talked more then, and I said, "Well, what are you doing now?" And he said, "Well, I'm actually going to do an archive project for the Viktor Frankl Institute in Vienna."
Oh, wow.
He is the media archive director for the Institute. And I said, oh, what's it going to be about? He said, it's really about my grandfather's work, and I want to interview all the people who he knew personally while he was alive,
right.
and get their perspective on him before. Some of them are really getting up there in years, and so before they're gone, I want to have their
Smart.
perspective
Right.
so that we can keep that in the Institute. And I said, no, you've got to make this story bigger than that.
Right.
Viktor Frankl's story needs to go to the world,
Yeah.
not to an archive drawer.
Yeah.
So I said, wow, you're going to need a U.S. producer then. I'm your girl. And I was sort of half kidding because I didn't know anything about producing film.
Right.
I had been producing conferences and CDs, DVD-ROMs, webcasting, all that kind of thing
But why not go all the way?
for 30
That's right.
years. But
Yeah.
film is a
Whole
film is
different
a whole
animal,
different
yeah.
world,
Yeah.
you know.
You can say it, but then you got to produce.
You can
Right.
say it, but who is it? Richard Branson is the one who always
Right.
says, jump off the cliff and then figure it out on the way down.
Yeah, pretty
Right.
much.
Well, that's exactly what I did with this.
Wow.
So we sort of joked about it then, but he got back to Austria, and I guess he started thinking about it. And then the next year, in 2009, we met again at the same conference, and we got serious about it. By that time, he had 41 minutes of the film ready to show that audience, because it was a group of psychiatrists and psychologists. And I watched it, and I was just blown away by the quality of the work. And I said, okay, we have to take this to the world.
Oh,
So we
nice.
set about forming a company. We incorporated our business called Noetic Films in 2010,
Oh, I like that name.
and started right away.
And to get to this point, I mean, you've had all kinds of great successes in your life. But let's talk about, you out there might be watching and you're thinking, I'm never going to produce a film, I'm never going to be anything, I'm going through challenges, you might have lost a loved one, you might be dealing with cancer yourself or something.
Right.
But let's go deep for a minute here and talk about some of the challenges that you've gone through, and then we'll move from there.
Well, I had a really great childhood. I mean, I'm not one of those that, had a story to tell from childhood. I had a really great childhood. I was lucky enough to have a great family. And my father was a brilliant guy, and I learned so much from him. And I went through a great childhood, college years, and into my 30s. And I want to say the 80s were probably my most productive business years, because at that point I started my media company. We just happened, this was another happenstance story. I pulled into, I moved to Washington, D.C. from North Carolina, and I was looking for a house, and I pulled into this little cul-de-sac called Tobacco Quay.
Tobacco Quay.
And I thought, well, at least it's some semblance of home with a tobacco store. Because I came from a place where there's lots of tobacco farms.
Right.
And I bought a townhouse there, and then within 60 days, the other Nancy from the White House, Nancy Reynolds, moved next door to me. She had been Governor Reagan's private secretary for 3 years in California, and came with him when he started running for office in '79. Well, she said to me, we're going to need a media company to follow us around and do executive level recordings. Is your company interested? I said, absolutely.
Yeah, why not?
Sign us up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we took a year off from all of our other work and worked on the Reagan campaign, the first
Wow.
one, for a whole year, and did nothing but that. And then later on, I got a contract with the RNC to continue that work.
That's exciting.
And continued it up until I moved out here in July of 2008,
Wow.
August 2008.
Wow. So tell us about some of the challenges that you've been through in your life.
Okay, well, let's start with what I call my own personal reign of terror.
Okay?
I like that. That sounds
Yeah,
good.
that
That sounds
gets us right in
exciting.
there.
Let's
yeah.
do this.
Let's turn the
Let's just
flames
go.
up.
Yeah.
Turn the flames up. My life was great. I met after doing all this work, and the company was going super. I met my husband. I was 35 when I met my husband. I thought I was never going to get married. I had
Right.
declared I wasn't. But one day I got on an airplane and I sat down next to my Mr. Darcy and my Rhett Butler, all rolled into one. And I got off the plane that day, and I called my best friend Paula, and I said, I met the man today I'm going to marry.
You knew that day, huh?
Yeah,
Wow.
that day.
Wow.
And she said, wow, I've heard that before. I said, no, this is serious. Well, it turned out it did happen, but not until 2 years later.
Right.
It's a long story short. But anyway, so we had a great marriage. Everything was going great up until I started with death and dying. I call it the death and dying around the kitchen table. First, there was my grandmother who got sick and died. Then there was my father, who got cancer, got sick and died, and I was very close with my dad. So
I had the same situation.
That took a very big part of my heart. Well, I always say it made holes in my heart. It's sort of like pain bodies build up, one at a time, one after the other. I'm sure they're not happy with me hitting the microphone, so I'll stop doing that.
Stop, Mary, stop it.
Don't worry about it.
But anyway, so I was the caretaker for all these people, and that's not, I like the other side of the table better, where you're the health care giver, not
Right.
the health care receiver.
Right.
But anyway, it was
you
tough.
lost your grandmother.
So I
and
lost my
father.
father, and when I lost my father, it really sent me into a depression. I sort of wouldn't go out of the house for a couple of years.
Wow.
I scaled back everything, and my husband was always there to help. And then I started slowly but surely going back to work. And I always have experienced something with each death called complicated grief, is what the psychiatrists call it, where you don't really get over it before you get to the next one. And then my mother got sick and died. And I had to help take care of her at the very end and deal with all of that loss. Then my best friend from college, my college roommate, died. And then, but all still, I had my husband. Don was with me, my rock.
Right.
And then he was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah.
And when I saw the x-rays, I come from a healthcare background originally, as you said, I knew where the situation was going to go. Because he was a voiceover artist and an actor in New York. And
wow.
he had been experiencing symptoms of what we call paroxysmal hoarseness, where the hoarseness would not stay, it would come and go.
Right.
And when he would be doing voiceover work in New York, they would oftentimes have to stop the cameras and start over because of that. And so we started searching for that problem 2 years before it was actually diagnosed. And he had a carcinoma up under the left vocal cord, so it was hiding.
Right.
Cancer's insidious. I mean, it often does this. So 5 otolaryngologists and 5 states later,
Oh my gosh.
we finally got a diagnosis at the University of Miami.
Wow.
Unfortunately, by that time, the tumor had wiggled its ugly little head into various organs of the body. And he had seeding in the liver, and seeding in the bones, and seeding in the lungs, and seeding everywhere. Well, I never, and people can make their own individual judgments about this. I never told him that, how dire that situation looked from a medical point of view, because I don't think low hopes are any good for anybody.
Right.
Yeah.
So we went about finding the best treatments, and for the next 5 years, we went to every major catastrophe you can imagine. That's why we call it dying around the kitchen table. Now imagine this, if you're an actor and a singer and a voiceover guy, what's the worst thing that can happen to you? They take out your voice.
True.
Right.
Very true.
He had to have a laryngectomy.
Wow.
He had to learn to use an artificial voice. It was just it seemed like every week it was a different part of his dignity that he was lost. Until finally he lost the battle altogether. And I just was devastated. But my best friend, who had been my best friend for 30 years, Paula, was there. And Paula helped me really get through it. Again, I took to my bed. It seemed like something I always do. I retreat to my house. I call it being like a wounded animal. You know, you sort of curl up and you don't want to go anywhere or do anything.
Right.
So I stayed home and really just tried to heal. And then I'm going to, the next part of the story is a little bit long. So let's talk about that maybe when we come back from the
Yeah,
break.
we're going to go to break in a minute, and we want to talk about the real impact of all the tough things that you went through.
Because you've gone through a lot.
Yeah.
You've bounced back.
Exactly, and you lost some other folks too after your husband.
Well,
is that
that's
right?
why I say the next part is a pretty tough story.
We want to get
so-
into that, and then as some of you out there may already know, those are tough things to deal with, especially
Right.
when they're happening like a domino.
Yeah.
Then you got to get out of it, and you've come out of it and become a producer of movies and all kinds of stuff. So we want to hear
Yeah.
some of your secrets on how you did that.
Okay.
So when we come back, we're going to spend more time with Mary Cimiluca and learn more about the challenges that she's gone through, tremendous challenges, and how she's gotten out of them. So we'll be back right after these short messages from our sponsors. Hey, welcome back. Boy, we are really learning about some of the challenges. We're just barely getting into some of these challenges with Mary.
Right, and what we want to hear is a little bit more of the challenges that you went through, because we want to get to the bottom before you went up, and then maybe share with us a little bit of what you used to get out of these challenges.
Okay, I'd be happy to. Well, probably, I told you all about the complicated grief process.
Right, and you left off where your husband
I left
lost
off where my
his
husband
challenge
died, and then I absolutely refused to go out of the house again for 3 years. And Paula, my best friend of 30 years, was bringing food over. She would come over and visit with me. And in fact, we almost lost our friendship during that time, because at one point she said, "Now look, this Black Widow, Italian Black Widow thing is getting ridiculous.
Yeah.
You've got to get out of the house." And I said, "The love of my life is laying over there under a bed of roses. And if you ever say anything else like that to me again, our friendship is over."
Oh, wow.
So that was the last she heard of that. But eventually I did start to go back to church, go out to dinner once in a while, started to crawl back out. And just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, she and her husband were murdered in their own home.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
At 3 o'clock in the morning one morning, I woke up and I looked at the clock on my bed, beside my bed, and it said 3:05. And I could hear Paula calling me, "Mary, help me, help me,
Really?
help me."
Wow.
And I had just talked to her at 10:30 the night before. Her husband was very, very ill, and we thought he probably would not make it until Christmas, and this was Thanksgiving time,
Right.
November 21st to be exact. And I could hear her calling me, and I thought, well, I'm not going to call her at this time of night. I had told her the next day I would call her when I woke up.
Right.
Well, at 6:30 the phone rang, and it was the Georgia Bureau of Investigation person.
Oh my gosh.
And he said, "I'm afraid I have some bad news for you. Are you alone?" And I said, "Yes, I'm alone." And he said, "Well, I'd like for you to go get a neighbor to sit with you while I talk to you."
Oh my
Wow.
gosh.
And I said, "Just tell me whatever it is. Nothing you could say to me would be worse than what I've already lived through." Boy, was I wrong about that.
Right.
Yeah.
So he said, I said, it's about Paula, right? Don't tell me that Jack died during the night. That was her husband's name. And he said, "No, ma'am." He said, "I'm afraid it's a little worse than that. They're both dead.
Wow.
Oh my
They were
gosh.
killed in the middle of the night in their home." And I just dropped the phone. And I could feel it right now. I just started screaming. I'm like, "God, you take everybody in my life and you take her too? How is this possible?
Right.
What has happened?" And then I started acting really crazy. I was running around the house, mopping the kitchen floor, doing the laundry. I couldn't figure out what to do. And I
Right.
was screaming at the top of my lungs. Finally, my neighbors came over and started pounding on the door because they couldn't figure out what was
Wow.
going on.
Right,
They could
because
hear
you're
me
screaming. Yeah.
Right.
And I remember Lorraine Sullivan, my next door neighbor, came in. She said, "Mary, what the heck is wrong?" I said, "Paula's dead. Paula's dead." She said, "Oh, no." So they helped me kind of pull myself together, and I had to get on the next flight, go down to Georgia, and deal with her
Right.
funeral and everything. But I came back home, and I ended up in the psych ward.
Wow.
I
Yeah.
went downhill, 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 downhill
That's so
until I
much to
finally had
deal
a
with.
psychotic break with reality. I was in the hospital 9 days before I even knew I was there.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, I just passed out on the floor in my kitchen, and my neighbor found me and called 911, and I was
Wow.
gone.
Wow.
And I don't remember any of it, not even to this day. Going
You
to the
just blocked it
hospital,
right out, yeah.
being in the hospital the first 2 weeks, nothing.
Well,
I
that's
call that
tremendous.
God's anesthesia.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
so it was a
Right.
way of
God's
letting my brain,
anesthesia. Wow.
letting
Heal
my
for
brain
a
heal a little
second,
bit
yeah.
before.
Yeah.
So my psychiatrist was really wonderful during that whole time. He said, "You can't let you out of the hospital until we make a decision of what you can do to have a new life. Because the good news is you're going to live, and the bad news is you're going to live.
Oh, wow.
And the reality is you've lost everybody you love." He said, "Tell me, if you close your eyes and look around your house in your mind's eye, how many pictures are on your wall of people who are alive? None.
Wow.
Wow.
None. Everybody in my inner circle is dead."
Wow.
So he said, "Okay, let's do this. Do me a favor, read this book, Man's Search for Meaning."
Really?
He comes in with it one morning. I'm like, I know all about Franco. I met him I learned about him in the 60s. I met him in 87.
Right.
He said, well, just humor me, read it again. So I put it on the side of the bed. And he said, and do one more thing for me. He said, you're brilliant at business. He said, I want you to create for me a business plan for Mary's new life. Pretend you're the CEO.
Aww.
And you've just been given this company to create a new life for yourself. Now, meanwhile, I have a chronic lung disease. I have pulmonary fibrosis, marching toward a lung transplant. So I have my own health challenges to deal with in the midst of all this, but I didn't care.
Right.
And you've had that since
I've had, well, it started with asthma, chronic bronchitis, built up over the years to this pulmonary fibrosis. And it's a terminal lung condition. My little doctor keeps reminding me that I need to stop work because I have a terminal illness, and I remind him that so does he. It's called life.
That's a true story,
None of us
right?
are going to get out of this alive. But anyway, so I went home from the hospital and designed this business plan for my psychiatrist, and I showed it to him, and he said, well, that sounds like a good idea. And what I decided to do was take a look at what do I really like. I like sunshine. I like the ocean. Okay, check.
Me too.
Yeah.
Okay. What kind of temperature do I want? I want moderate temperature year round. Check. What kind of business? Well, my company, the media company, can go anywhere, do anything. It doesn't matter because our clients are all over the world.
Yeah.
So it didn't really matter for work where I lived. And so I really narrowed it down to, I want a church within 1 mile of me because that's important to me. I want a medical center within 5 miles. I want this, that, and that. And I finally found the spot. I want an active 55 community because I don't want to deal with houses.
Right, because it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. So I was just doing anything I could to cocoon myself into a space that was magical. And I found Ladera Ranch, California, 6 miles up from Laguna Beach.
It's a nice place to be. Yeah.
Yeah. So God picks me up,
Yeah.
brings me here. I say I was standing in a vat of mud,
Right.
and I landed in a vat of sunshine. Now I meet the Franco connection.
Yeah.
And love is starting to pour into me from all over the world because of that.
That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had all of these Franco encounters over decades.
How funny, right? And then it just leads up to this one point.
That's why I said to Alex the day we met, shut up, you are not Victor Franco's
Right? You're like, no, you're not.
No. Because that was only 6 months after I came here.
But there's a plan, right? And it's evident when things like that happen.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's in that book, Man's Search for Meaning? Were there some
Well,
keys
Dr. Franco taught that regardless, and this is how Man's Search for Meaning is actually his own account of his time in the camps.
Right, in the Nazi
which is only
camps.
3 years out of his 90-plus years of life on Earth.
Probably the longest 3 years of his life. Yeah.
Well, he lost his whole family.
Right.
He lost his pregnant wife, Tilly, his mother, his father, his brother, Walter, and his sister-in-law.
Right.
So he only had the one sister left, and she had gone to Australia, I think, to live in. And that's why she survived before the war.
Right.
But the rest of them were killed in the camps. And he barely survived himself. But when he came back to Vienna, he was really depressed. He was in exactly the same spot I was when I landed here, and decided to pour his heart out into a manuscript because he was a great thinker. He was a great philosopher.
Right.
He was a psychiatrist. He was all this, and he always used his brain to work himself out of things.
Right.
And he came up with 3 very specific ways that we can find meaning in our life. And he taught us that regardless of the circumstances we find ourselves in, we can always choose a meaningful life, a meaningful moment.
We can choose our thoughts, right? That's the other control we have. Yeah.
So that's how. The other thing I did was I had this psychiatrist who's so wonderful who treated me said, well, why don't you come up with some little tricks you can use to get yourself out when you feel yourself falling down into the abyss.
Right.
So I developed some tools. I invented a little ceiling sweeper, and I would lay down, if I was starting to feel myself starting to get depressed, I would lay down on the bed, made it a ritual. I would bring the little sweeper down, and when these, what I call the ants, the automatic negative thoughts, would come into my brain, the sweeper would sweep my brain clean of them, and then I would let the sweeper go back up, and then I was done with it for a while.
It's very much like a meditation kind of
It's
thing.
very much
Yes.
like a,
Right.
it's called cognitive behavioral therapy. It's just a
Yeah.
form of CBT. But I didn't really do it intentionally that way. I just came up with these little things that
Right.
work for
Little
me.
visual.
Right.
Yeah, little
Right.
visual cues. And that really helped. And I mean, sometimes, right after Paula was murdered, I would be in that bed 30 times a day trying to sweep out those thoughts.
Whatever it takes, man.
Whatever
Yeah.
it took.
The
Yeah.
Swiffer sweeper.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Swiffer sweeper. And I had to lock the bedroom door. I had all these, because I thought people were coming in to murder me
Right.
with knives
Well,
because
right.
of the way she was murdered.
Yeah.
I mean, I kept reliving that whole thing, what she must have felt, what she must have gone. I just couldn't sleep at night.
Well, no.
So I would,
Yeah.
and then another thing I did was I got an egg timer, and this came from my psychiatrist. He said, why don't you try what they call it the kitchen timer technique, but
Right.
I got an egg timer. And he said, decide how many minutes you want to feel bad for any time you want to feel bad, and then just feel it.
And then let it go.
And then let it go. When the
Yeah.
time runs out, it runs out. So I got one of these little hourglass ones that turns up for 5 minutes, and I would set it for 5 minutes at a time, and I would just cry, whine, scream, punch a pillow, do whatever I had to do.
Huh.
And then when the timer went off, click,
Well, you got to get it out.
and
You can't hold
eventually
it, in.
it was over.
Nice.
And now I still get them. I mean, I won't
Right.
say everything is good, but now I get them maybe once or twice a month,
Which is,
you know,
yeah, nice.
which is better than 30 times a day.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
would
that's
think so.
a
yeah.
lot better.
A little bit better, yeah.
And I don't cry
Crank it
all
on
the
for
time.
24
I mean,
hours.
Yeah, you're like, oh, it's going to be a long day.
So those are some of the techniques that I use, and then of course there's a lot more in the formal thing, and then getting
Right.
back to work, taking that first step, beginning with that yes, getting out the door the first time. One step leads to the next, to the next, to the next.
Right.
Right, absolutely.
So now Viktor Frankl had this system, and he call it
Logotherapy.
Logotherapy.
Logotherapy,
Yeah.
puts quite simply, means healing through meaning.
Okay, well, we want to talk about it some more, but we're going to go to break, and let's talk about what you've learned about logotherapy, and then also you did another movie and had learned some other
Right,
stuff,
right,
different
right.
ways to deal with things. So let's talk about both of those, and you can kind of, we'll let you be the expert and share
Okay.
their ways of
Well, I'm not a
healing.
professional logotherapist, but I'm an armchair logotherapist.
That's okay.
You know more than we know, so
We'll
you're
take
a
that here. We've got some
professional. Yeah.
armchairs for you. So we'll be back with Mary Cimiluca in just a minute. We want to hear from our wonderful sponsors, and then we'll be back to talk some more about how to get over some challenges in your life, and how to then bring all those positive things in your life to accomplish more. Welcome back. We're learning all kinds of cool stuff about how to get out of challenges.
Because we all want to get out of challenges, right? Well, Mary, you were talked about healing through meaning, which is
Yes.
also part of logotherapy. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, Dr. Viktor Frankl was, first of all, a physician and healer, and a psychiatrist and a great philosopher. And he grew up in Vienna, Austria, where thinking was, in the 1930s and 40s and 50s, the way of the land. And he followed, his theory called logotherapy is often called the third school of Viennese psychotherapy, the first being Freud. Everybody's heard of the Freud theories.
Right.
And Dr. Freud was all about his theories were all about finding meaning through pleasure in your life, and
Right.
getting more sex, more pleasure, more
Right.
goods.
Right.
And Frankl and Adler both came along and said, we don't agree with that. So Dr. Alfred Adler was the second school of Viennese psychotherapy, and he thought that it was all about power, that you could find more meaning if you were a powerful person, if you were powerful in your career. And so Frankl came along and said, "Nuh-uh, you're both wrong." And of course, I'm simplifying it a great deal, but
Right.
he said, what is missing, what man must do, is find meaning in his life.
Right.
love
So
that.
so
And
logotherapy.
so
I wear my shirt
logotherapy-
with my logo. Is
It's
that
not the
what
cup
that is?
kind of logo.
Okay.
Logos is a Greek word which means simplistically healing. And so it's healing through meaning. So Dr. Frankl described his school of logotherapy as a therapeutic tool to be used by psychiatrists and psychotherapists in helping people find meaning in their lives.
I like that one much better than the Freud or the
So
Adler
do
one.
I.
So
And it really,
Sex and the
it
Power.
too much
really
sex and power will throw you off, I think.
every single time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's
you
for
know, people keep
politicians,
trying to
right? Politicians
people
use
keep
those.
trying to prove that over and over again. You know.
Right.
Yeah.
But he gave us three very specific ways of finding meaning in our lives by using techniques that he uncovered.
Okay.
The first group is called the creative values,
Okay.
where you can, and he articulated this much better than I because I'm not a trained professional in this field. I'm just sort
We're
of,
gonna,
I
we're
always
you
gonna
are.
pretend
Yes,
that you
you
are.
are.
right
we're going
now,
to pretend I am.
Yeah, because I
Well,
thought it was the logo.
I'm smarter than
thing.
you are about it. So
Yes, you're the expert
We'll
compared
take
to me.
I call myself an armchair logotherapist.
Oh, good.
But the professionals use terms like creative values, experiential values, and attitudinal values. And I'll talk about all three for just a little bit because you can find meaning in one or the other. You oftentimes will find different sets of meanings moment to moment, year to year, during
Right,
our
it changes,
lifespan.
yeah.
It all changes. But it's important to know that you can always find meaning regardless of the circumstances in your life, which is
Right.
what I was telling you. And the creative values speak to things like finding a work, creating a job, creating a business, writing a book, making a movie, doing something creative,
Okay.
being a painter, being an artist,
Accomplishing something.
accomplishing
Right.
some work-related goal. And the experiential values would be about encountering another person, finding somebody to love. There's all kinds of experiences that we can have in our lives that would bring us meaning.
Right.
And then there are the attitudinal values, and that's what came into play for me the most because suffering, there is meaning in suffering, even though you
Right.
don't have to suffer to find meaning.
Right.
But in that suffering, you can choose your attitude, and that's part of the attitudinal values. And once you've made that choice, then you can start to uncover meaning in your life. I came so far down, and I always say that my solid foundation was built on rock bottom.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty solid.
Yeah,
It's
right?
pretty
Doesn't
solid.
get any more
Yeah.
solid than
Doesn't
that.
get any more solid than that.
Foundational.
Yeah,
Yes.
I didn't. I mean, a lot of people say, "Well, you're so happy all the time. You probably never had a bad day in your life." I said, "Well, you might be surprised."
Right, yeah, no
Yeah.
kidding.
I didn't land on this mountaintop.
Right. Yeah. Step into my lava. Let
I
me
think
tell
that's
you.
a quote, actually. They say you never land on a mountaintop, right?
Oh, I
You
don't
never-
know. Is
Yeah,
it?
I think I
I-
read that the other day.
Okay,
Ziegler
that's
might have
a
said
good
it.
one.
Yeah, it is a good one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I found through my suffering that I could choose the attitude I wanted once I realized, and that came from rereading again Man's Search for Meaning, because I had sort of forgotten about it. And then, of course, when I met Alex and we started to do the movie, the whole thing turned into a creative value. And I met him and we became great friends, and it was an experience.
Right.
So all of those
Right.
three came together for me for the perfect unstorm.
Trifecta. Yeah.
Yes, the unstorm.
The
The unstorm
See,
in
we're
my
having
life.
an experiential.
This is an
Yeah, right,
experience
right
right,
now.
here.
and
Absolutely.
with you out there too. You're
Yeah.
connecting with us. and
Exactly.
We grow from that. And there's meaning in what we're talking about.
Absolutely. So I could wrap, as a person who loves and thrives on education and research, those were three things I could really wrap my head around.
Right.
And so it saved my life.
Wow,
It
that's
saved my
incredible.
life.
That's
I
a
was
powerful
suicidal.
statement,
I
yeah.
sat in a chair and thought to myself, well, you're medically trained. You can take some drugs out of the cabinet. You can hook yourself up to an IV, and you can give yourself a little Pentothal and give yourself a little Pavlon, and you can get out of this mess.
Wow.
And then I thought, okay,
yeah.
enough.
Yeah, right.
No. You don't want to pull a Michael Jackson on
No.
us.
No.
But I
No.
mean, I had recurrent thoughts of suicide all the time, all the time.
Well,
I'm
you
sure
went
that's
through a
right,
lot.
yeah.
Up until I had the psychotic break.
Right.
After that, I have not had them.
So that break was a savior for you.
It was God's anesthesia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
Wow.
God's anesthesia.
That's amazing. So, anybody that's out there experiencing a difficult time right now, what do you think the first few steps are that they would take to try to get
Well,
out
I
of it?
think the first thing is to try and get rid of your automatic negative thoughts. Rewrite your script
That's
Okay.
huge for a lot of
in
people.
your head.
Yeah.
You can do that from your bed. You can do it
With
from
the
your living
sweeper.
room.
Yeah.
You can use the sweeper. I'll loan it to you. It's free. You can borrow mine anytime.
That's right. And if you order now,
Free shipping.
And then find a lot of times during hard times, we alienate our best friends.
True.
Oh, good point.
And because they want to fix your mind, but your mind is what's sick.
Right.
It can't be fixed.
Or the ones we love, too.
Or the
will
ones we
alienate
love.
them,
We,
yeah.
we tend to push away those we're closest to.
Very true.
So I say, once you have identified a way that you could see some light at the end of the tunnel, that you can see your way back, then start to bring in all your support group again.
Right.
Okay.
So you got to heal yourself first. You can't
You've got to
give
heal yourself
unless you're-
first.
Right.
Because happiness, Dr. Frankel wrote this, and it's so true. You can't search for happiness. Happiness must ensue.
Right. It's
You
not.
can't
yeah.
pursue it.
Right.
In
Yeah.
fact, and not only must we do it, we have the responsibility to do it. And we'll talk a little bit about responsibility later on, I hope, because
Good. Yeah.
based on Dr. Frankel's teachings, there's a great movement of front now called the Statue of Responsibility.
Right.
Right.
And so we can delve into that a little bit more. But
Well, you can go into that now if you want to.
Okay.
We
Is it a
actually
good
just had
time?
one of our other episodes that you might, if you're watching this on the archives, you can actually go and watch one with Lisa and Gary Price, who are the sculptor and the executive director for the Statue of Responsibility. So we had
Okay.
them on our show before.
Well, this all started because in 1961, Dr. Frankel was teaching at Harvard, and I'm sure he talked about it before that, because he talked about it on every stage he spoke on around the world from then on. And he said that what America needs, because there's so much, in those days with the Vietnam War and with this and that, there was so much struggle to find meaning.
I think we still have that problem without the war going
Yeah,
on.
Right.
well, we still have wars though.
That's true.
That's true.
Yeah,
yeah.
so we still have wars within ourselves regardless. And so he said that what America needs is a statue of responsibility on the west coast of the United States to bookend the Statue of Liberty on the east coast of the United States, because freedom without responsibility is no freedom at all.
That's true. That's very
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, and so a Statue of Responsibility Foundation was developed. I think it began in the early 90s, and don't quote me on this, but it started with Kevin Hall, Stephen Covey, another guy named Jim, whose last name I can never remember, and Dr. Frankel. And
Poor
they
Jim.
came together with Jim.
Poor Jim. Sorry,
Poor
guys.
Jim.
Sorry, Jim.
No, sorry, Jim. Poor Jim has passed away anyway. So,
Okay,
or
well, so
passed
he's
on.
found meaning.
Yeah, so he found
So
meaning.
we're
Yeah,
good.
he found higher ground.
Yes.
But anyway, they came together and discussed this really seriously. That what would it take to have this monument, this 300-foot monument built on the west coast of the
Wow.
United States? It would be like the Statue of Liberty Foundation. And so they went to Vienna, they traveled to Vienna, and they met with, first, Kevin Hall contacted Gary Lee Price, the world-renowned sculptor
Right.
in Utah, and commissioned him to design the Statue of Responsibility. And this is such a great story. I love this
Yeah.
part because Mrs. Frankel also told me about it when I visited her in Vienna.
Wow.
Gary designed hands that connect,
Yeah.
and they're like this, and one reaches down and the other one reaches up. And we could call it Connecting Humanity, but I think that was an early logo, but it really shows us that, we are all connected and united. And when they traveled to Vienna to present the first mold of that to the Frankel family, Mrs. Frankel took Gary by the hand and dragged him into Dr. Frankel's study, and Dr. Frankel had passed on at this point.
Okay.
And she said, "I want to show you something, Gary." And Gary had no idea of what she was going to show him. And Dr. Frankel had a favorite carving called The Suffering Man. And it was in a niche in his bookcase. I've actually seen it at the house of Marian Gassa. And she took it down from there, and the hand, it's a bust of Christ with a hand reaching up. And she said, "Now you have answered my husband's question. He always asks, where's the hand reaching down?
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
And you bring to me a monument,
Wow.
that will answer this question."
That's incredible. I think responsibility is a big,
A responsibility.
yeah, it is a big responsibility. Good point. Thank you very much. You're pretty
I
quick
tried.
with that.
I know.
Yes. But not only helping each other, but helping ourselves.
Helping ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, when he was here, when Gary was here, he said that they were a left and a right hand.
Exactly.
Right.
And
Exactly.
so that responsibility can be something of us helping someone else with a right and left hand, or
ourselves.
Helping
ourselves.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And we're going to go to a break in a little bit here, and when we come back, let's talk a little bit about some of you took a lot of responsibility in your own life in trying to get over all these challenges that you've been through, and those I'm sure have helped to inspire you and strengthen you, and you've utilized those things.
Well,
in a way
I'm young into it.
right.
I mean, this is only 6 years I'm into this.
Right.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure, but you're having success with it.
Right.
You're producing movies, all those kind of things. So we want to talk a bit more about the exciting things that you're doing with the films, what some of your future plans are that you're wanting to do.
Okay.
And talk about the future of responsibility in your life,
Right.
and the future of what you want to give back to the world in your life, and maybe a little bit more about those the little decade things, where you're going to move on to something every decade. I think that's incredible.
Okay.
So when we come back after these short messages, we're going to talk more with Mary Cimiluca and learn what you can do and I can do to be more responsible in our lives. I don't know about you, but I am learning some great stuff here today.
Yeah, a lot of great stuff. But what we haven't learned yet, Mary, is what do you do every day? You're a producer, aren't you?
I'm a producer, and that's usually, as I was telling Dennis, that's usually the first question anybody asks me. What does a producer actually do?
Yeah, I'm curious.
Produce something.
Something.
Well, here's what we do in reality. It sounds glamorous, but what we actually do is we beg for money, we cry about money, we negotiate money, we whine about money, we fight about money, and when it all works out,
You get money.
we get money.
Woo! Nice.
Wow.
That's the best part,
At
right?
least it's not all about money.
At least it's not all about money. And if you know anything about my life, you'll know that the last thing in the world I care anything about is what? Money.
Money.
Yeah.
So I've landed into this very strange world, but that's unfortunately what the job of a producer does, because it takes a lot of money to make a film, a lot.
Right.
And you have to, once you go out and you get the money from your investors who trust you with their money,
Right.
then you have to actually do what you said you were going to do. One of the first things I learned when I started taking my film classes on producing in Hollywood is that my teacher told me, there are two kinds of people in Hollywood, and you got to decide right now, today, which one you're going to be. They're the people who use everyone until they get what they want, and they're the people who use everyone so that you all get what you want.
I like this
Oh,
one. I
yeah,
like this
that's a
person
nicer
over here.
one.
Yeah. So, and it's really true, and it's throughout the spectrum, whether it's the cinematographers, whether it's the directors, whether it's the composers, down to the key grips, everybody's in the same two spheres.
Right.
So the hardest job I find as a producer is to figure out the right people to be on the right team at the right time in the right place
That's hard
with
to do.
the right money.
That's
Right.
sounds
Yeah,
sounds
and the right
complicated.
investors.
Yeah.
So the way I approach it is I decided that when I was going to become a producer, and I had already sold my first job before I became one, I jumped off the cliff.
And then
I
grow wings
jumped
on the
in
way
and started
down.
learning how to do it.
Yeah.
I took every course I could find, and I found some great mentors. Suzanne Lyons, who's a past president of Women in Film International and a master talent teacher, has been my mentor since I came into this business in 2010, and she's amazing. She is a great teacher and a great friend, and she gives you all the tools that you need to be successful if you're willing to put in the work.
Right.
And there are others. Dove Simmons from the Hollywood Film Institute, I took his courses, have taken them several times and have all his tapes. So I took a variety of different courses. I took writers' courses, not because I wanted to become a writer,
But just to
but
know.
because I need to know how to hire writers.
Right.
And I think that's important. If you're building any business, you need guys to understand every aspect of the business
Yeah,
before you can
absolutely.
actually produce anything.
Because you get blindsided.
You get blindsided, and you also get talked into a lot of stuff that will cost your company money.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
if you hire the wrong writer
Right.
rather than the right writer,
Right.
Yeah.
You can get messed up.
So
And
but
bad
I'll
writing.
tell you a little
Right.
funny story about the Hollywood Film Institute, and everybody who's been there knows this story, so it's not off school.
So you took your training in Hollywood.
I took my training in
Wow.
Hollywood, running
Yeah.
back and forth up and down the freeways, 3, 4, 5 days a week, whatever it took. I'm still taking classes. I mean, I will feel like I'm a real producer, even though I am one now.
Right.
Right.
But there's so much to learn. I mean, when you come into this in your 6th decade, and we'll talk about that, I'm going to be 65 this year, and I started this film career in my 60s.
Wow.
So that's kind of crazy. I mean, most people come in their 20s and 30s and 40s, but not me. No, I always do everything the hard way.
That's okay. That's all right.
That's
Builds
good.
character.
I like
yeah.
that.
And I took this writer's course, and I got to tell you this funny story. So the teacher, who's this colorful guy named Dove Simmons, he stands up, he says, okay, you people who are in this class today, you want to learn how to write a movie script. I know that's what you all want to hear about. I'm supposed to teach you producing, but you don't give a damn about producing. All you want to do is learn how to write a script. So I'm going to tell you how to do it. Here's how you do it. You have a beginning, you have an end. You have 5 uh-ohs, 5 oh goshes, or oh shoots, or whatever, and 1 oh my goodness. That's your script. Then you put those together in 33 beat points, you're done.
I can do that.
Well, you know what? Our homework assignment that
I've written
night,
one. I think
me
our
too.
homework assignment that night was to take 5 movies, dissect it, and see if he wasn't right.
Is he?
He has been teaching in Hollywood for 32 years, and he's taught over 5,000 producers, according to him, and this is exactly what happens in every film. Now, I can't go to a film without
Without
saying to
paying
Alex or
attention.
somebody, well, where's the oh my God? This is not a good movie. They didn't even do.
They missed the oh my god.
They missed 1 uh-oh.
Oh
So
my
it's
God,
hysterical,
tragic.
but yeah.
So the movies that you've produced, right?
Yeah.
Tell us one of them movies.
Victor and I, which is about Dr. Frankel's life.
Right.
It's a personal story of his life. It's called Victor and I, and that's an interesting story. Alex chose the name and I because he was interviewing all those people closest to Dr.
Right,
Frankel who
right.
were still
Ah,
alive.
I see.
And it's not the eye of you and I,
Right.
it's the eye of the beholder,
I like that.
talking about Dr. Frankel's work.
Mm-hmm.
So it's Victor and I.
What's the website? Is
Victor, VIKTOR, movie.com.
Okay.
VictorandImovie.com. Our second film is about Dr. Milton Erickson, and that is called Wizard of the Desert. And it was called a wizard because no one really understands Dr. Erickson's work. He was a genius of the 20th century also, and a great backstory on him. He grew up in a silver mining community in a ghost town, what's now a ghost town called Orem, Nevada. It's 7,500 feet. Their house, the back of it backed up to a mountain. It was dirt.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that's how rugged it was
Right.
up there.
That's amazing.
And his father worked for a silver mining company that later went out of business. But then they came down the mountaintop, and Dr. Erickson had polio. And
wow.
even in spite of the polio, he overcame all those challenges and taught himself how to heal himself. And he really started developing his theory of hypnosis in order to prove the doctors wrong. Because he got so angry laying in bed one night when he heard the doctors tell his mother that he was going to die.
Oh my gosh.
And he said no mother should ever have to hear that about her boy.
Well, who are they to tell him he's going to die?
Well,
Right?
Yeah.
unfortunately, that's what physicians do a lot
Right.
of times,
Right.
and they don't always think about what they're saying. So he set out to prove him wrong,
Good.
and he did it. And he developed his Ericksonian hypnosis, which is a different brand of not the woo-woo kind with the
Yeah.
the
The woo-woo
clock.
kind.
The little spinning thing.
Yeah, not the TikTok kind.
Right, right.
But he taught himself how to put himself into a trance, mostly to heal his own pain.
Wow.
Because once he had gotten over the initial polio, then it came back later as post-polio syndrome, and he was in a wheelchair and
Oh my goodness.
did all this great work. And there are now 132 Erickson Institutes around the world.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
And the institute which supported the film is the Milton H. Erickson Institute of Phoenix, Arizona, directed by Dr. Jeffrey Zeig, and they're doing amazing work all over the world.
Wow. What's in your future? I mean, that's.
Well-
we've got a few minutes left here, and we want to talk about your next 65 years.
Oh, well, By design, all my life, I've studied something different every decade.
Which I love that. I love that.
That's really cool.
In my 6th decade, I fell into this one accidentally.
Right.
Because I was planning to study law in this decade.
Oh, okay.
But it didn't work out.
You had a little, not a Freudian slip, a Frankel slip.
I had a little slip. Yeah. Well, I had a little existential crisis
Right.
Yes.
when I lost my whole family, so that sidetracked me.
Well, producing sounds more fun than law, anyways.
It does. It
No.
does. I think so. I'm with you.
One of my oldest clients in my other business is the American Academy of Psychiatry and the Law, and I've been interested in criminal law since I first started doing
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
So is that
stuff.
something
So
in
that's
your
something
future?
in my 80s I'm going to do.
Okay, 80. So
And
then
in
we
my
got the 70s.
I'm hoping to study creative writing and theology
Love it.
combined.
Nice.
Because I
Wow.
like to write, but I don't really understand the structure of writing. So I want to study that formally.
Yeah.
And I'm going to study creative writing. So I tell Alex wants to make, my partner is Alex Vesley, he's a director. He wants to make the world's biggest sci-fi film.
Ah,
And I want to see him get his Oscar, believe me, because
Yeah.
I'm mentoring him, and that's my goal, is for him to get his first Oscar
right.
before I leave. So we've only got 5 more years.
Gotcha.
Before
Because
you
I'm going to
move
be
on to your
65
next-
this year.
Then you
Right.
gotta
So we
move
gotta
into
get
your
at it.
Writing and
Yeah,
stuff.
because he's moving on. She's moving on to greener pastures.
I'm moving
Yeah.
on to, well, he'll be all set and set the world on fire. He's a very smart young man.
That's great. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So, of all the things we've talked about, we've just got a few minutes before we finish up the show. What would you say is that one golden nugget, that one bit of information for somebody that's...
Well, my life has been built around my mantra, which is, if you live your life from the inside out and not from the outside in,
Yeah.
most of your days will be wonderful.
I love that.
And you don't need stuff coming at you in this consumer culture. You don't need cars, you don't need houses, you don't need stuff.
Right.
What you need is to develop your heart and to find people to give it to.
Oh, wow.
So if you find things that you can work in your passion, you can work from your heart, you can speak from your heart, you can love from your heart, you can give to your heart, you can find people to help,
Yes.
people to serve. I'm in this world to serve, not to take.
Right. Wow.
To bend, not to break. And to
Yeah.
love, not to hate.
I love that.
Wow.
And I know that. And I've always known that intuitively.
Wow.
So that's what I would say. Try to develop your inside person and figure ways to get it out to the world.
Wow. So they can learn more about your films at...
You can learn more about
Victor and
films at
I.
victorandimovie.com or wizardofthedesertmovie.com.
Okay. And then in 5 years, they'll be going to your
Some
creative
sci-fi
writing
world.
website or something, right? So we love having you on the show.
Thank
really.
you so much.
Thanks for coming.
You both have been great. It's been
Really
super.
appreciate it. And we appreciate you sharing your real self, too.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
huge.
it wasn't a show where we had to fabricate a bunch of stuff. I
No,
mean,
I
It's real
wish it
life.
was.
Yeah.
we'll have to do one of those shows once
Yeah.
sometime.
We'll
I'll have
make
you
up a
come
whole
on.
Stage show,
story.
Yeah, we'll make up a bunch of stuff. So, but in the meantime, thank you for sharing your heart with us. And,
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
And
thank
some of
you.
the spots that we talked about today are pretty gripping.
Pretty raw still.
Yes,
for
and
sure.
so if you're out there and you're dealing with some of those real heavy challenges, we know that people are getting killed on airplanes and dying of cancer and everything else, and they may be good friends of yours or even family.
Bring out the sweeper.
Yes,
Sweep it out.
Get the sweeper out.
Get the sweeper.
So thanks again. We loved having you.
Thanks.
We really do. And I want to remind all of you that if you're wanting to be able to get through challenges and get through the opportunities that you see in front of you, get through the door and make things happen, then if you're thinking about being successful, remember the thing that we tell you every week, and that is quit thinking about being successful and start doing something about it. I want to know by next week that you've done at least one more thing that's gotten you closer to your goal. See you next week.